Welcome to the Hello Sunday podcast with me, Nikki Hayden. This is the podcast that discusses everything self-development, spirituality and sobriety. And it wouldn't be me without a little sprinkling of humour. Whether you are just starting out on your journey of self-development or have been exploring these topics for years, are completely alcohol-free or just curious about living a more sober lifestyle, this is the podcast for you. Each week, I'll be exploring topics in both solo episodes and with some amazing guest experts. So if you like what you hear, then please subscribe, rate and review. So with that said, let's dive into today's episode. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Hello Sunday. How are we all? I hope we're all doing fine, doing well. I hope you've had a good week. Look at her. She's putting out another episode within a week of the last one. Who would have thought it, hey? Never say that I'm not consistent, guys. But no, in all seriousness, it feels good to have the spaciousness and motivation and clarity and headspace to be recording again. I've actually got quite a few ideas for upcoming episodes, so I don't know, I'm sort of tempted to do a little bit of a batch record of a few, but then I also like updating you on my life. Now, I don't know, there's probably some of you listening thinking, I skip the life updates, it's boring, nobody's asked for it. And then I know other people have messaged me saying I love hearing what you're up to and checking in and just following, the journey with your family and stuff. So it's going to stay. And yeah, as and when I do record in real time, I'll update you on what I've been doing. But if I do some pre-records, it might just be the content and the topic, just because I kind of don't really want to be missing weeks again if I don't have to, because I really enjoy the consistency and I know that I get messages when I don't put stuff out. And also because I just feel like there's things that I want to talk about that at the point that I think of them, I'm super inspired and I have all of the kind of, all of the clarity around the thought and the topic. And then sometimes I can make a note of that and a week or two later, I'm like, what was that referring to again? And what was that bit about? And to be honest, that's why I'm recording this episode now, because this was something that it was only probably a couple of days ago that this really came to mind and that I decided that I wanted it to be a podcast topic. And actually, if I don't record now, it's a topic that the feeling of really needs to come across and I'm going to lose that. So I haven't actually had a full week since the last podcast was released. So the stuff that I'm telling you that I've been up to now is literally probably 2 or 3 days worth of my week. But I'm sure there'll be other exciting things to fill you on next time. But yeah, what have I been doing? So I went back to the gym at the weekend. That was, I'm not going to lie, I was shitting myself about going back. I injured my ligament in my knee in February. Something really stupid. I've obviously been heavy weight training for, it would have been nearly 18 months, but it had been about a year at that point. And ended up injuring myself by turning around to the bookcase to pick up some dog treats. So something went, I felt like it went, and I was like, I've really done something here. It didn't swell up, I could walk on it, but it just felt unstable. And it pretty much stayed that way, even with a really full tight knee support, for about 8 to 10 weeks. And then it slowly got better. And it was only actually being back home in Birmingham, back with my family in the Midlands, that I didn't wear the knee support, didn't really have time to think about it. I used it again a little bit more and it started to ease. But anyway, long story short, went back to the gym on Sunday, was fine with my knee, but then went again on Monday because I wanted to get a couple of sessions in, and I've got the dog Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday in the week because my husband works from the office. So yeah, I did 2 back-to-back sessions, and I'm not going to lie, I got up on Monday morning and I was so achy. I'd got really bad DOMS and I just thought that I wouldn't normally go in this situation, but I'll be honest, I didn't want my husband to think that I was a lazy toad that had committed to going back to the gym. Not that he's at the gym at the moment, because he did his back in, didn't he? So he's actually not gone back yet. But I didn't want to be the person that said, I'm going to do this and then not do it. So I did 2 sessions. I did one on Sunday and one on Monday, and I will never ever do that again when I haven't been back for so long. I wasn't lifting super heavy, but it was, enough to feel it. And I've basically given myself like gym flu. So for 2 days afterwards, I felt Monday, Tuesday this week, I felt so rough. I felt like I'd got like all the symptoms of like the flu, basically, like headache, body aches, was just feeling really, that like feeling when you touch your skin and it hurts. I knew I wasn't poorly, so I pushed through, but it was horrible. I had to keep going to have a lie down. And basically, my old friend ChatGPT told me that it's when you overexert your body and all of your energy resources go on muscle repair, basically, and you don't have reserves for anything else. So yeah, that wasn't much fun. I was also walking like John Wayne, so won't be doing that again. And then what else have I been doing? That's about it, to be honest. I haven't really had a very busy week this week. It's been quite chill. We also went to meet a new dog sitter for the pooch, which we're just trying to increase our network in Leeds so that we can just get out and do more stuff and enjoy some time together and have trusted people that he can go to. But I'm recording this on Wednesday and we're going to see her tonight. So I'll let you know next episode how that went and whether he's got a new friend. But yeah, if there's anybody out there in Leeds that ever wants to look after an adolescent dog that is high energy but also super affectionate, let me know, because you can take him off our hands at any point. He's got a face that like butter wouldn't melt, but he's been a little terror. Just, I think the ears switch off and they test boundaries during adolescence, and apparently it can go on until they're 2 and he's only just 1. So love that for me. Anyway, what are we talking about today? So this is going back to something that it's actually not spiritual and woo-woo at all. People think of manifestation and making things happen, creating things as, a spiritual law, as something, because you can't see it, but like you can't see gravity, right? So I never really understand why the science behind it can be ignored in favour of people just saying it's woo-woo bullshit. But anyway, that is what tends to happen. But the law of assumption is something that I've been aware of for a while now. I've followed people that have talked about the law of assumption. There's a guy called Neville Goddard who's kind of like the godfather of the law of assumption, the person that writes, the main books and things like that. So I am familiar with it, but it's never really landed, never really, like I've heard the words and understood the concepts, but the actual feeling of it and experiencing it in my own life has never fully landed until this last week. And so I wanted to share it. So the law of attraction, and if you've ever seen The Secret or read The Secret, if you've ever watched The Secret, then please go and read the book instead, because the film is horrendous. But it's all around asking for what you want, so being clear on your intentions, believing that you can get it, having the belief, and then receiving it. Ask, believe, receive. Now, there's a massive gap there in terms of the step between believe and receive, which is the action part. You can't just think you want something and then it will happen. I mean, that technically isn't true, because that has happened to me before, but generally speaking, you have to take action, you have to take the steps, you have to create. So anything that you can see around you now, wherever you are, was, unless it's nature, unless it's something completely natural, if it's man-made, it was thought of in somebody's mind, it was conceived before it was put into the world, right? So it's the conception of something from somebody's thoughts and mind into the world, and that's the kind of the way that it works. So the law of assumption is basically the part of that ask, believe, receive that is the believe part. It's all about believing that you can get something. It's about believing that you are worthy of it, believing that it can be yours. And the law of assumption states that is really, yes, you have to take action, but it's the belief part that is so important. It's the belief part that is the part that stops people from getting what they want, in essence. And like I say, that, like, as words, lands with me, because if you're trying to manifest a free coffee in a day, the chances are that you'll probably believe that you can do that. It's something that is not that out of reach. It's probably something that you feel that you can create quite simply, and the belief around it is not that difficult. Whereas if I said to you, you need to manifest £1 million by the end of the week, the chances are most people listening now, if not all of you, would immediately think, well, that's ridiculous, that's not going to happen. Because it's, even though the process is the same, it feels like it's so out of reach and so much bigger. And so when we think about the things that we want and the things that we can get, there are limiting beliefs that play into that will allow us to immediately create the energy around it of we can have it or we can't, or we might be able to have it, or that might be a bit out of reach. And if you've not listened to the episodes that I've done around limiting beliefs, then I would suggest listening to those, because I'm not going to go into too much today around deconstructing your limiting beliefs or identifying and deconstructing your limiting beliefs, because we'd be here all day. And that this is really just the concept of the assumption and the belief part that I want to talk about. But the idea of the law of assumption is that everything that you assume that you can have and believe from your very core that it is yours. So it's not just a belief, it's an assumption. And an assumption is generally something that you don't question. You don't have to think, can I have it? Can't I have it? It's just, you just assume that it's yours, or that it's within reach. That those are the things that are going to show up and that you're going to be able to manifest. And actually, it's got nothing to do with how big of a manifestation it is, or how expensive it is, or how likely it is, and everything to do with whether or not you actually truly believe and assume that you can have it. So the process and the way of going about manifesting a coffee versus £1 million house are exactly the same. Okay, there's a bit more action involved in the house, because you'd have to go through the legal process and you'd have to go through going and viewing it and that sort of stuff. But in essence, the belief and the assumption that you can have it are exactly the same energy. There's no difference between knowing that you can get a free cup of coffee and knowing that you can get a house. And the reason that this has become so sort of relevant and I've become so aware of it lately is about 6 to 8 weeks ago now. Probably 7 or 8 weeks ago, my husband and I were laying in bed, and we've been keeping an eye on Rightmove for a few months now, not religiously, but and Rightmove, for anybody that isn't in the UK, is like it's like a marketplace for property. So it's where if you register with like an estate agent or a realtor, if you're in the US, then they will list your property on different websites. You've got like Zoopla, Rightmove, and then like all the estate agents' own websites. And generally speaking, Rightmove is the one that if a property's in the area and it's with an estate agent, it will be on Rightmove, it will be listed. So occasionally we will dip into Rightmove, and you don't have to do it that often, because if you do the filters to the last 7 days, 14 days, 30 days, you can catch all of the properties that come up within your filtered search within that time. So we'll probably only look maybe once every couple of weeks, once every 3-4 weeks. And 9 times out of 10, there's not a lot on there, because we don't want to move to another house that needs renovating. I personally would really struggle to live in a renovation. I'm so affected by my environment, and my productivity and my general sense of well-being just plummet when things are up in the air and messy and stuff. So I know that living in a renovation, we would have to live somewhere else. And right now we just don't have the funds to be able to do that. So we knew we wanted a property that was kind of done, that we could just put our own touches on. We knew we wanted it in an area where there was a lot of nature, and not just for the dog. I mean, that is obviously a plus point, but for my husband and I, we knew we wanted it in more of a community. So whether that was on like a housing estate or somewhere where there was neighbours, because where we are at the minute, we're on a corner plot. And so our neighbours are like over the road, so we don't get a chance to like speak and see them very often. We haven't got a next door neighbour as such. The people next door are in flats and they're like around the back of us. So it's just a bit of a weird setup, and we just haven't built a community around here. We don't know anybody that would be able to call us if we went away and there was a problem with the house. We haven't got anyone to locally keep an eye on the dog. So we knew that was important. We also knew that we didn't want a complete new build, but we also didn't want a property that was that old that we would have to put a new roof on or relay the foundations at any point. You know, we just wanted something that was easy, low maintenance, more space. Ideally had like an office as well as 4 bedrooms, or 3 bedrooms and an office, because I need an office space, a decent sized garden, gets the sun. There was like a list of stuff. And to be honest, because our mortgage wasn't running out until next year, like January next year, we weren't in that much of a rush. So we were only looking at things that really ticked a lot of those boxes. And we were sat in bed a few weeks ago, and I found this property on Rightmove, and I said to my husband, oh, wow, this looks really nice. It was done to a really high standard. You could tell the people that had lived in it had obviously renovated it or done it up for them. And that was the other thing. The house that we live in now, we bought from a guy who had renovated it to sell. And the problem with that was it all looked great from the outside, from not the outside of the property, but like, you know, initially. But then when we moved in, there was things that he'd done where he'd cut corners, he'd done jobs himself. There was just so much that we had to. I mean, anyone that knows us, the first year and a half of this house was spent having, you know, all the fences replaced because they blew down in the wind, having to have all the ridge tiles on the roof done again, and just things that were, you know, either old because the house is 45 years old, or were done to a poor, you know, the first or second night that we moved in, I had a bath and couldn't get the plug up afterwards because it was one of those that you twist and it's like a pin that pushes it up, and it had obviously broken. He'd just stuck a screw or a nail onto the end of the plug. So the weight of the water, there was no way that was coming back up. It was wild, some of the stuff. So, you know, beautiful house, but also was a pain in the arse when we moved in. So we knew we didn't want to buy a property that somebody had like renovated to sell. And this one definitely didn't look like that. It was like really high spec, ceramic tiles in the garden, grass, really kept nice. It was a low maintenance garden, beautiful furnishings throughout. Everything was done, you know, really neatly. So anyway, I looked at it and it was probably pretty much near the top end of our budget had we been moving next January. But there was a few issues with looking at the property now, and that was, first of all, we would have had to pay quite a substantial amount to come out of our mortgage unless we ported it over. But the problem with porting it over was we were on quite a high interest rate, because when we moved into this house, my husband had poor credit. We'd had to go through a specialist lender. There was a lot around it where we didn't want to stay with the lender and stay on that rate because it is high. And for that level of mortgage, it would be like through the roof payments. We also knew that I needed more like accounts in terms of like my business accounts. My business profit had also gone down last year because there was a dip in the market and there was a lot of change and personal circumstances. So things hadn't been as good last year as the first year. And generally speaking, we just weren't in a financial situation that we could afford to move at that point. And you're probably thinking, well, why the bloody hell were you looking on Rightmove? And yeah, this is where the, I guess this episode kind of comes into play because, you know, spoiler alert, it all worked out. So we looked at the property online, and then I just said to my husband, I want that house. And I'd said that about this house when we moved here, and we'd ended up getting it, although we were in a position to buy this at that time. So it was slightly different. So I was like, should we just book an appointment to go and look at it? And he was a bit dubious. He was like, well, we can, but the problem is, you know, the mortgage payments are going to be super high, and, you know, you probably can't get a mortgage anyway at the moment because you need another year of accounts, and your profit was down, and we need to come out of our mortgage. We'd have to pay. We haven't really got enough saved for stamp duty and deposit and everything. And I was like, okay, I hear you, but let's go and look. And I think he was dubious because he knows that once I want something and once I set my mind on something, I'm like a dog with a bone and that's it. And it very rarely transpires that I don't get it. So I think he knew at this point that it wasn't just a let's go and see what happens, and it was a I'm going to make this happen. And from that first viewing of the house, I went to look and I walked around, and also the owners were so nice. They were just like me and my husband in terms of like, well, I say just like me and my husband. She was just like me, very liked things in a certain way, had very, expensive taste in terms of the decor. So wanted everything just so, really looked after the place. Everything in the house was just, how I would have done it. And I loved that. And they were just really nice, about the same age as us. So I came back from that viewing and I was just like, I want it. That house is ours. And it's so weird because even though my mortgage advisor had looked at our my accounts and said, there's a really good chance that they're not going to lend you based on, affordability for this place, based on your accounts from last year because your profit went down. They need to really see growth over the 2 or 3 years that you present. There was just something in me that was like, no, that's our house. That is our house. And there was never a doubt in my mind that we couldn't get it. Like, even though there was so many challenges and obstacles in the way, and most people would have just thought, oh, it's not the right situation, let's leave it, and then lost out on that house. The second that I went to see it, I was like, that is our house. And then I think in reality, what happened was I ended up having so much other stuff on and so many things going on in my personal life, and obviously was down in the Midlands with my family, with my nan, and didn't really have time to think about it, that once we'd listed our house and we started getting viewers, the process of going through the mortgage application and everything, like, I wasn't focused on forcing this because I didn't have the bandwidth or the headspace to be able to focus on it. I was focused on what was going on in other parts of my life, and this was just in the background. For those of you that are regular listeners to the show, or maybe you know me personally, you won't have been able to get away without hearing me talk about Simprove. Simprove is a scientifically backed, water-based probiotic drink. You drink it daily and it has been scientifically proven to help with things like bloating, IBS symptoms, pain. It was actually a dietitian friend of mine that introduced it to me last year, and I honestly wouldn't be without it now. It's helped with my energy, with my bloating, it's helped with my immune system, and also things like my skin. The list is honestly endless. Now, I have got a code for you. So if you'd like to try Simprove, you can get 50%, that's a massive 50% off your first 3 month subscription by going on to simprove.com and putting in the code Nikki50. That's NIKKI50, or clicking the link in the show notes. But that belief that we could get it, that assumption that like absolute, this is our house and it's just going to happen, never left me. Of course, there was moments of, oh, what if we can't get the mortgage? But it was never, oh, we're not going to get the mortgage. It was always, what if we can't get the mortgage this way? How do we then go about it? But the actual how of getting the house was never, I don't know how to explain it, but it was just never like a thing. Like, I never thought, well, we need to do this, we need to do that, we need to do the other, then we'll do this, then we'll do that. We obviously worked out the finances because you can't go into something like this without doing that, and what we'd need to make. And then just before we got an offer on our house, my husband had his biggest pay month this year, so that helped our savings for like stamp duty and stuff. Then the offer that we got on our house was enough to have 7 or 8 grand left over out of the equity that we'd need to put down as a deposit so we could pay off the mortgage here, pay to come out of the mortgage. Everything just fell into place. And the other day I was listening to some content around law of assumption, and it just dawned on me that there wasn't a moment in that process where I didn't assume that that house was ours. I saw us living there. I saw me letting the dog out in the morning and getting to know the neighbours and going on the walks. In fact, so much so that we even started going on walks, I think I said this in the last episode, around the new area just to like absorb it all. And we'd even done that before we found out that we'd got the house. So that assumption, that belief, that absolute nailed on, this is ours, was there. And I don't even think that it was like, I don't even think there was limiting beliefs in that process that I needed to overcome, because the thought of being able to have it was just so natural. The things that I had to overcome were very practical. They were very like, you know, finance related and the process, and you know, and also I think it helps that we have an amazing mortgage advisor that just took everything off our hands and made it all very easy. Wish I could say the same about the estate agent, but that's another story. So yeah, it just really landed because I'd got a very relevant recent real life example of how that had happened. And then I think to the contrary, there's been times where I've wanted something so much and it's not happened because I've just not really believed it. I've just not, you know, you can say all the affirmations that you want. You can try and rewire your brain to make yourself think that you believe that you can want it. But if deep down in the core of you, there is something going, yeah, but you're not going to get that, or that's not possible, it's very, very difficult to make that manifestation come into your 3D reality. And so I think the work for me, following on from this kind of revelation, is all around the limiting beliefs and self-worth. And like, I'm not going to go into all that today, as I said, because it is a lot. It's a, you know, that's a whole episode or 2 or 3 on its own. But if you don't feel that you can get something, if you don't feel that you are able to manifest something, it's normally down to self-worth, and it's normally down to what you have experienced in the past dictating what you think you are worthy of or can get in the future. And let me tell you now, there is absolutely no correlation whatsoever with regard to your past dictating your future. Stephen Bartlett admits himself, he was a university student who used to go to his local pizza store and put his hand down the back of the sofa there and try and look for change because he didn't have enough money to eat. He's now a multi-millionaire that sold a company for tens of millions. And if he'd have only ever thought in the mindset of, well, I can't have that because I've got no money, or, you know, I'm not deserving of that, he would never, ever have been able to manifest the things that he has into his life today. The amount of people that are entrepreneurs, business owners, leaders, motivational speakers who came from the worst humble beginnings and literally had not a pot to piss in, and they've managed to turn their life around because they believed that the previous experiences in their life didn't have to dictate what they were worthy of in the future. But it's so easy to say that, and then it's a completely different ball game to actually believe it. And you really have to delve into the mindset work and the self-worth work and uncovering your limiting beliefs and where they really come from and really addressing those. And I didn't ever think that I wasn't worthy of this house, because to me, like, I don't know, like, I just feel like, first of all, it wasn't that far out of our reach. It wasn't like, I guess, you know, a $10 million mansion. I've still got a lot of work to do around my self-worth, around achieving things and accessing things like that. So it wasn't like crazy money, but it would have been very easy to dip into the mindset, oh, well, I can't have that now. There's no way around that. And it wasn't for me to figure out the how. It was for me to believe and then to feel into the energy of having it. And also the surrender just came from distraction, in this case, pure distraction. I am still really working on surrendering because it doesn't happen easily for me. I'm you know, like to have control of a lot of things. and controlling your manifestations is just never going to work. So for me, I think being distracted during that period allowed me to have that amount of surrender, and that's why it was able to happen. But I just don't think that it would have happened like that if I would have been in the mindset of trying to figure out the how and pushing and calling the estate agent every day and calling my mortgage advisor every day. And I just didn't have the time. So yeah, just a little interesting reflection on the law of assumption and actually assuming that you can have something and just feeling into the energy of having it and knowing that it's yours will often be enough for you to get it. You show up as the person that has it. That's the other thing. You know, I was showing up as the person who had the house. I'd sent the link to my friends. I'd told people that we were moving. We were doing the walks around the area when the house is based, when we'd move. I was planning out, you know, what we were going to take with us. And there was not a doubt in my mind that that was going to happen. And I think that's the difference in the energy of how you show up then versus, oh, well, I won't do that just in case we don't get it. And this might not work out. So, oh, let's just hold off. And, you know, it's a very, very different energy. So I hope that's landed, resonated, had some sort of, impact for you. And would love to hear your experiences of this. Like if anyone else has got really great manifestation stories or experiences of like the law of assumption and you know the energy around belief, then please do drop me a message because I'd love to hear about them. And until next time, have a great week. Thanks for listening. You can find us on Instagram at HelloSundayPod, or you can email us on hellosundaypod@outlook.com. Have a great week.